Today I am working on a card for a beach wedding that we are invited to. I'm going to be using the Classic Wedding Stampin' Die set. I'm going to be using the car and the banner. I'm also going to be using some of the embellishments from the Sea Turtle stamp set. There is no die, so these do need to be fussy cut out. But I'm going to do the little sea star and the sand dollar. And then I'm bringing in this Soft Waves 3D embossing folder. And I think that's going to make a great wave pattern in the background. So I'm going to do some ink blending. So let me clear this out and bring that in and let's get started. I've brought in a silicone mat so that I can ink blend. I can stamp off on it or ink off on it. That way it's easy to clean. And I'm just going to ink blend on this piece of cardstock. It is a 4 by 5 1/4. I'm making a standard A2 card, so this is going to be a little bit smaller than the card. And what I want to do is I'm going to be putting, I think, what I'm going to try to make is some sand for the bottom, and then I'm going to have the car in the center and then the waves in the background. So I'm going to ink blend this entire piece, starting from about here or so up, because I'm going to put the sand down here and then I'm going to run it through the embossing folder afterwards, because I don't think that I could get into all the grooves if I ink blended afterwards. So this is just an ink, just a blending brush. You want to ink up your brush, tap off, and that way when you come in, you want to start off from the side and then just gently make some circles, and you're just going to work your way across. I want to be a little bit heavier. I want the color a little heavier here on the bottom, and then as I go up, I want it to blend out to a really, really pale blue. I'm using Pool Party because I thought that would replicate the waters really well. It is a wedding in Mexico, so I've never been there, so it should be a lot of fun. So I'm envisioning, this tropical setting with these beautiful waters, for the ocean and what have you. So this is going to take a little while. You want to build up your color slowly. It's kind of like cooking. Can't take anything away, but you can slowly add. So I'm going to just slowly ink up my paper. I'm going to put on some music and then I'll speed this up for you so you don't have to watch the entire process. Okay, if you look, you can see how I have the darker color and it's fading out. The more pressure you put on your brush, the more color you're going to get, but you could also risk dropping a lot of ink all at once, and then you have a really large splotch that is actually really hard to blend out. So I think this looks pretty good. I'm happy with the way it looks. Let me clear this all out and let's go to the next step. I've brought in my die cut machine because I'm going to be running this through the embossing folder through the die cutting machine. And I'm going to be putting it in sideways because I want the waves to go across the card. So I'm going to try to line that up as straight as possible, but make sure that I get all the waves onto the paper. When you're using the embossing folder, make sure that the Stampin' Up! Logo is up, because that will then emboss up instead of deboss down. You want to run your embossing folder through the machine with the folded side in. And then on the Stampin' Up! Machine, you use the base plate 1 and then the embossing plate for the 3D embossing, which is number 4. And we're just going to run it through. Excuse the shaking. Oops, sorry. Let's just see how that came out. Check out that wave pattern. Oh, I think that's going to look really, really pretty. Let me clear this all out and then we will move on. What I'm thinking, what I'd like to do is I'm going to bring in some crumb cake cardstock, and I want it to replicate the sand. So I'm going to be putting in a couple of layers of sand. And so I'm thinking something like this, and I'm going to tear the paper so it gives it some texture, but I want to add some dimension to this paper. So I'm going to be bringing in my splatter box because I want to splatter the paper. I'm thinking I'm going to be splattering it with both crumb cake and I want to use pecan pie. Let me grab an ink block or a stamp block and some water and I'll be right back. I'm going to just take my ink pad and I'm just going to smush some onto the stamp block right there. And then I'm just going to take just some water and just spray it just so that it's a little bit more liquid. And then just mix it all up. Then I'm going to just take, this is just my bone folder, and I'm just going to splatter the cardstock. You know how sand has texture to it? This is what I'm trying to replicate. It's just to add some dimension so that the sand doesn't, you know, my paper sand does not look so flat. Okay, then let me clean that one up real quick, wipe that off. And I'm going to do the same with some pecan pie. So just going to take the ink pad, I'm going to smush a little bit onto there, add a little water, and then mix that up as well. And then let's splatter that as well. And I'm hoping to get, you know, some dimension with the different colored brown tones in there, just so it's just not so flat. I'm also going to bring in my Stella. I'm going to try to do the same thing with it, trying to get a little bit of sparkle into the sand. You know, if you go to the beach and sometimes you see what looks like glass or something in the sand. So that is what I want to do. Let me wipe this one off. And let's try that with the Stella as well. So I'm just going to take my Stella, and it's just a glittery pen. And I'm just going to try to put some on there. And I don't think I'm going to water this down. It's pretty thin looking to begin with. I'm just going to pick some up with my fan brush. And again, just tap. And I'm hoping just to get that little bit of sparkle. It is a wedding card. It does need a little sparkle, if you ask me. And let's see. Let's bring in just a little bit more. Alrighty. That's looking pretty good. I'll lift it up in a second for you to see. I can see some of the sparkle in the paper. And I think that's going to work out well. Let me lift this up. I don't know if you can see that in the light, but I can just see all this sparkle. I think that's going to turn out really, really pretty. Let's clear this out, and let me wipe this off real quick. Clear it out, and let's start assembling our card. I've brought in my Misty so that I can stamp the car the silhouette of the vehicle. There is also the vehicle, the little bug. You stamp it in a color and then you can do the outline. So it has like a base and then an outline. So I'm just going to position it here. I think I'm just going to stamp it. I want to keep it kind of neutral, so I'm going to try crumb cake. And so I'm going to just stamp really gently. Don't want to push down too hard because I can come back and forth and do a couple of passes stamping it. Because if I over stamp it, then my lines are going to get way too thick and it won't look quite so good. So you can see here where it's missing a bunch of little spots. So we're just going to go back in, stamp it up again, just light taps all the way around. And then we can try focusing a little bit more on pressing here in the center. Let's see if we can make that a clearer impression. Let's see. Now, I think one more pass and that should do it. I'm going to try to focus a little bit more just there on the center. Alrighty. And that looks pretty good. So I'm going to take this and let me wipe off my stamp real quick. And we're going to run this through the die cutting machine. So I'm just going to be pulling out the die for the car. And at the same time, I'm going to pull out this die, which is the banner. I'm going to actually stamp the sentiment. I'm going to have a sentiment that sits in there. So let's pull out that sentiment and let's stamp that. I'm going to actually bring my Misty in one more time. Just move that off to the side. And I'm going to stamp the sentiment onto the same paper, partially because it's such a small sentiment and I want to just make sure that I get a really, really clean impression. So I'm just going to, actually what I'm going to do real quickly is I'm going to actually heat emboss this. I think I want to unboss it in gold. So let me just put down a little bit of powder, a little anti-static powder so that my embossing powder doesn't stick. So lift that up and let me bring in my Versamark ink pad. And this one, again, very gentle taps. That way you're not smushing the words because they're so tiny. Just really light pressure. And since it's in the Misty, we can go back and forth a couple of times and make sure that the impression comes out really clean. So just light taps, don't press too hard. And let's lift that up and see. Beauty of the Misty is that you can just stick it right back in. And I know it's a little hard to see, but it is stamped there. So let's clear this out of the way. And we grab a pair of scissors. I am just going to trim off the bottom part because I don't want to run that yet through my die cutting machine. So I just trim that one off. Let me bring in some embossing powder. Oops, excuse me. And just a piece of scrap paper. This is going to be gold. This is from Simon Says Stamps. This is an ultra fine antique gold. And as you can see, it says just married. I'm going to bring in a paintbrush here and just kind of wipe away some of the excess that's stuck there because I don't want it to emboss on there. And let me go heat up my embossing tool and get this embossed. Be right back. So I've heat embossed my little sentiment there. It says just married. That came out really well. I love to see how the magic as it changes from powder to the melted sentiment. Let's clean this up real quick. And Get this put back into our jar so we can use it again. It's amazing how little you use when you heat emboss your stamped images. So let me bring in my mini die cut machine. I can do it here on camera. I do use a magic mat, which is from stampbook.com. I like them. They doesn't cause warping of your plates, which happens a lot of times, and I'm just much happier with it. Let me trim this down just a little bit so it fits through the machine. I'm going to take my die. I'm also going to be taking some low tack tape. This one just happens to be pink. And I'm going to use it to hold my die down so that it doesn't shift when I die cut. And what I like to do when I do tape down my dies, I don't always do it, especially if it's just a die that's not cutting out like a, an image or something. I like to make sure that I try to make sure it doesn't get onto what I am die cutting, because in the past I've experienced once you remove the tape, even if it's a low tack, that sometimes lifts the image that you just die cut. So we're going to place that on our little magic mat and put on our top plate and just run that one through real quick. There we go. And we have our little car all cut out and ready to go. And then we're going to take this, our sentiment, and again, I'm going to use a little bit of tape just to hold it in place so it doesn't shift. Nothing worse than, embossing your sentiment and lining it up, and then it shifts while it's going through your die cutting machine. So again, just on the edge, just to hold down the die so it doesn't shift on me. And let's run this one through real quick as well. Just make sure this mat is larger than my bottom plate, and if you end up falling off, it will not cut through all the way. So you always just want to make sure that whatever you're die cutting is on both of those plates. So oops, sorry. My table isn't the most sturdy. All right, there we go. All the way out. And let's pop that out of the die. And look at that. I'm going to have that hanging right there off of that. So let me move this little guy out of the way and we'll start working on assembling our card. So now that we have our waves, we have our car, and we have our sand. Let me grab the other one real quick. Okay, found my other sand piece. And so what I'm going to do to give this a little more texture, I'm going to, I don't say aggressively, but I'm going to tear it, and I want to have a lot of, ups and downs, and just so that it's just not straight across. And then this one's going to go on the bottom. I think maybe we'll tear that one more time. It's a little bit taller than I think we're going to need. So this one will go on the bottom. And when you're tearing your paper, you always want to tear towards you. Otherwise, you won't have the same effect of the torn paper if you're looking for that type of an effect. So this one's going to go on the bottom. And then this one, so I'm thinking the placement of the car is going to be right about there. And then this one, I'm not sure if I want it to go under the car. Let's see, let's lay this one on top. Yeah, something like that. So let me tear this one. I've got a lot of extra room, so I'm going to have some space to do this. And we're going to tear this one as well. And we can always trim off any extra in the end. So this one I'm going to put down first, and I'm going to have to trim the sides off as well. I have to cut these ones a little bit larger. I'm going to just leave a little bit sticking out so I can see exactly where I'm putting my paper. And then our car is going to sit on top, something like that. And then I have some embellishments that can go around as well. What I'd like to do with my little banner, because it seemed, I mean, I know the car is white. I wanted to keep that kind of simple, but that just seems to blend in a little bit too much. I'm going to ink around the edges. I don't have a gold ink pad, but what I do have is this Posca gold paint pen. And you just have to shake it up. I'm going to bring in a piece of scratch paper just in case. And I'm going to kind of paint, I'll try to paint along the edges just to give it some separation from the car. Kind of like when you would, when you ink up your papers with a blending brush, and then you just want to just give it a little kiss on the edge. And see if we can make a mistake. So I'm going to have to recut this one. Give me a moment and I will be right back. So I recut, stamped, embossed this little guy. And as you can see, I inked with my pen right around the edges. So when I lay it on the car, there is some separation. It's not, you know, doesn't blend right in with it. So let us start assembling this. I'm going to, I think I'm just going to, yeah, let's see, we're going to assemble. Let's figure out where exactly we're going to put the car right here. Can't have it in the water, so it's going to have to be just a little lower. All right. So I'm just going to take a pencil and just give it a little mark right here so I know where I'm going to trim that off. That way it's a little easier to trim, I think, off than on. Let me just bring in my little guillotine trimmer. And let's take a little bit off the bottom. It gives you such a clean cut, the guillotine trimmers, compared to the paper cutters. At least for me, I'm not too sure if it's just, you know, operator error or what, but sometimes it just does not trim very straight. Let me bring in my tape dispenser and let's adhere this down, and then we'll trim off the other side, that little bit of extra that we have. So I think I like this side better than that side. So we're going to line this up on this side. That sounds great. I'm just going to flip it over so I can see exactly where I want to trim it. I'll take that little edge off. And then when I put this piece down, I want to pop it up a little bit. So I have just these little foam squares. They're like dimensionals, but not. These I think are from scrapbook.com. I'm not 100% sure, but I like them. They come in two different thicknesses. This is the one that's a little bit thicker. And then if you look at them, this one is a little thinner. So you can actually use them to build up your like your clusters and whatnot, and that way you can have a couple of more a little bit more variation in the height and what have you. Just gives it some dimension, some interest. I'm only going to take off a couple in the middle because the ones on the end will hold them in place. And let's adhere this one down as well. So we will have to be trimming off as well. All right, let's get that one all lined up. That looks good. I do have a couple dimensionals hanging over. I'm going to see if I can get those trimmed off with my guillotine trimmer as well. I think that was successful. See, I like how you have this little bit of dimension here, because I'm going to take the car, I want to tuck it in a little bit, I just think that's going to look so darn cute. So let's adhere the card down. This is just tape runner. And this one I'm not going to pop up at all. I'm going to just slide this little guy right in there, kind of center it on the card. And then we're going to do the same with the banner. Okay. Line it up here with the top of the trunk. And I think that is going to look so darn cute. Very, very cute. Now let me bring in some of those embellishments we talked about earlier. These are the ones that are from the ocean or the sea turtle stamp set. And these little guys are from the Ocean Friends Stampin' die set. So these ones come as a threesome. So, excuse me, it's a little loud to open, but you can see a few in there. But you get a little clump of 3, and they're little tiny starfish. And so they cut out several at one time. So that's quite efficient. And I'm just going to build up a little cluster here, kind of like we do when we scrapbook, just to give it a little bit of, you know, a little bit, needs a little something here, right? So I think that's going to look very cute. And let's see, maybe we'll put another, let's try another sand dollar. No, let's try a starfish. Let's try another starfish. And this is Pumpkin Pie, the starfish. And this stamp set, if I am correct, is like a 2-sided stamp set. You stamp one side for the solid image, then flip the stamp over, and then you get the detail. So I did not. I just did the detail. I just stamped it onto the white. But yeah, I think that actually looks kind of cute. I don't want it too embellished, but I think that that's going to look very, very cute. Let's adhere these little guys down. And then we can mount it onto our card base. And then we will have a completed card ready for our wedding. Pretty easy. And I think pretty darn cute. So just bring in a piece of paper so that I can, oops. I'll get adhesive all over my mat. These little guys are a little harder to adhere down because they're so tiny. That there. And I'm going to grab one of those dimensionals that we use, one of those pop dots. That's what they used to call them a long time ago. And I'm going to actually, let me see where my scissors. I'm going to cut this one in half. And I want to use it just to pop up part of the sand dollar, because otherwise it's going to go super flat back there. Okay, that gives it just a little support. Let me get this one adhered down, some sticky adhesive, and okay, and then just one more tiny guy. And let's clear these guys out of the way. So again, I'm putting it onto a base of white cardstock. It is just an A2 card, which means that it is 4 1/4 by 5 1/2. And then what I think I'm going to do, here we go. So what I'm looking for is I have these foam strips. This is the same brand as the little pop dots that I use. And I want to pop up this panel a little bit, just to give it a little bit of dimension. So these ones come right off. And I'm thinking probably 3 of them will be enough, just to support the panel, one on each side and one in the center. And that way it'll have a little bit of dimension. I am putting this into the mail, so hopefully it doesn't get too squished. But think it'll also help with adhering down this textured panel because of the embossing folder. So I just try not to get my head in the center, but I'm hoping to get that centered as best as possible. And there you go. This is my beach wedding card. Can you see the sparkle from the Wink of Stella? And you get a little sparkle here from the embossing powder, and then all that great texture from the waves. I think it's very cute. I'm going to stamp a sentiment in the inside with a personal note, and there you have it. I'm very excited how this came out. Join me again next week for a new layout. I hope you have a great week. See you soon. All the products I used will be listed in the description below. If you enjoyed this video, I'd appreciate it if you would subscribe, share, and like. It helps my channel grow. Till next time, have a great day. Bye.